A Biblical Guide to Prosperity. One of Israel's leading venture capitalists, Michael Eisenberg, uses principles found in the Old Testament as his economic strategy. Eisenberg is the author of Tree of Life and Prosperity, 21st Century Business Principles from the Book of Genesis, which explains this biblical approach. He joins us on the record. Michael, thank you for speaking with us today. What drove you to write this book about your personal experience with values investing?
Well, it actually started out not as a book, but as table conversations with my children around the Sabbath table on Friday night, where we talk about the weekly biblical or Torah portion, as we call it in Hebrew, and try to apply it to modern day life and what we were doing. And that's how the book started. But in general, every biblical commentary brings their own baggage to the table. My baggage is my daily life of venture capital investing in the economy. And so I look at the texts through that lens. And this notion of investing based on values, I think, has become super important today, because we have a lot of both, let's just say, companies and countries that have run amok in their use of money or technology without undergirding them with timeless values. And values themselves have become a little bit relativist in the modern era, and we need to take them back to things that have been anchored in thousands of years of history.
Absolutely, and that's what your book is based on, these reflections on passages from the Torah, the Law of Moses, and for us Catholics, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. Why did you call it a living text?
That's really a great question. You know, a lot of people look around at the world today and we look at Google and Facebook and say, well, those are the biggest media properties of all time. They have the most unique users of all time. But in truth, it's the Bible, the Old Testament, and the New Testament, by the way, but particularly the Old Testament, that has the most unique users in the history of humanity, and even today. And there's a return to these texts as well. And I think things that have stood the test of time, like the Bible, have a lot to teach us. They don't stand the test of time for no reason. It's because they're ever relevant in every generation. And again, I come back to the same point, which is we've kind of gotten to a point in history and media where today's values, get thrown out with the dirty laundry tomorrow. And we need to get back to stuff that's really rooted and anchored. And I think the Old Testament, the Bible, is critical for that. And we just need to teach people and tell them that it's as applicable today as it was 5,000, 3,000, 4,000, and 1,000 years ago.
That's right, as many say, ever ancient, ever new. And so you bring these stories of Abraham and Adam and Eve and use them to explain basic principles about the economy and the dignity of work. Tell us about that.
There's a notion today, for example, that if we just give people money, that's okay. And this thing that they now call universal basic income, recently Ilhan Omar proposed it, the congresswoman, but it's not true. And one of the things that the story of Adam and Eve teaches us is that people, when bored, when they don't have what to do, like happened in the Garden of Eden, will sin. And when they sin or don't even talk to each other, right? Eve talks to the serpent. She doesn't even talk to her husband, Adam, the only 2 people in the garden. It goes sideways. And human beings created in the image of God need to be creative. That's part of what we do. It's what creates dignity. It's what creates respect, and what moves the world forward. And then I would say, moreover, the highest form of creation, obviously, is to have children. I'm sure you've paid attention to this, and your viewers have as well, but there are no children in the Garden of Eden because people were not creative and have to work to contend with the thorns and thistles when they make bread or harvest the crops. They don't have children. So productivity and creativity is what makes us ultimately creative and makes society better and causes us to have the most important thing, which is children. And I don't need to tell you, but children cause us to be more loving and tolerant of other people because all of our kids are different. And that's, I think, the story of Adam and Eve in a nutshell. And another timeless principle, I think, is we can see with Abraham. So Abraham, he leaves his ancestral home and he takes his nephew with him. The only thing we know about his nephew is he's an orphan. Mm-hmm. And Abraham is a wealthy man. And what he does is he invests his wealth, so to speak, in making his orphan nephew more successful. And I think that's an important lesson for society today. We have people gaining untold wealth. They need to invest it in growing the pie and helping other people improve their lots economically and earn a living. And I could go on with the other characters, but I might bore your listeners.
No, not at all. It's very interesting. But let's talk about that, building your network, that idea of community and helping others as a more valuable. You say that it's more valuable to build your personal network than to invest in your personal knowledge when you're building your career. Why do you believe that?
So there's a couple of points to that. One is having a personal network, like having a family, supports you when you're down and when you're up. And everyone goes through cycles in their career and their life. And we need community to support us in those times of both trouble and prosperity. And that's one important thing. The second thing is that I can only have X number of connections. But if I have a community, a trusted community of people, then we can have a multiple of X number of connections. I mentioned to you before coming on air, I have a friend named Artie Minson. And one of the things he said to me, he says, I'm only doing investments in people I trust, but I have this network developed over 25 years now. That's a lot of people I can trust.
Yes.
And I think it's multiplicative in how you bring good people to the table. That's the first thing. The second thing is markets go up, markets go down, but people of values persist through them. And I think that community, which has shared values, values based on text, values based on tradition, values based on shared beliefs, enables us to count on people during good times and bad times, and that they'll be true to those principles throughout that time. And I think that's critically important. And obviously, who you know is more important than what you know. I always say about myself that my gift in life is I know who to ask, not necessarily the answer to the question.
It's a brilliant, brilliant way to live. You are a father of 8, going back to that idea of family. There are many couples out there that feel like they can't have children because they're not financially prepared. They can't afford them. What do you tell them?
I think this is a complicated topic, first of all. But I think part of having children, and we've been blessed with children and financially as well, but we had the kids before we were blessed. And I think that kids make you more optimistic about the future, make you work harder, and make you invest in the future more because you want your kids to have something and to have a better world. And so I actually think in this cycle where people say, maybe I can't afford it, I won't have kids, it may be the opposite is true, which is if you have kids, you'll find a way to afford it. You'll get creative. You'll get innovative about how to do that. We have an investment in a company called Rise Up, which operates in emerging economies, not in the United States right now. And what they've shown is you can use technology and innovation to help people eke more money out of every month. And what we see is that people who have families and have kids are more motivated to invest the time and effort in doing this, and they actually find money and find savings to invest in the future. And so I think it's critically important to be optimistic about the future. Kids are a part of that. I think it's critically important to have a reason to invest in the future. Kids are important for that. And perhaps most importantly, kids are our most important network. They're our support network. They're our rock in times of trouble. And they teach us to love other people unconditionally, which is so missing in society today.
Right, that's selfless, knowing how to give of yourself. Let's go back to something you touched upon, this idea of values generating value, the way that you come together as an investor, but also as an entrepreneur. When it comes to companies and brands being infused with values, how might your values be considered different from those of, say, Ben & Jerry's or Nike?
Yeah, really good question. So Ben & Jerry's have what I would call relativist values. Whatever kind of, gets them noticed in the newspaper today, which is thrown out with the fish wrap tomorrow, they'll do. It was really bold of them to kind of make a statement about a country such as Israel with a tiny number of people. I'd like to see them take the same stand on China, which
Absolutely.
has 1 billion and plus people, and certainly has very, very egregious stands, whether it's on the incarceration of the Uyghurs or stripping people of their wealth, as the case may be. So, I think relativist people stand for their values when the cost is small, whereas people of timeless values will stand even when the cost is larger. And I think that's kind of the importance of the Old Testament and the biblical system, which is these values stand the test of time, and you apply them, irrespective. It may come at real cost, and I think that's a really important anchor for people to do. And by the way, going back to the point of network before, that's what enables me to trust you over time, because I know you'll stand up for your values, not because it gets you a New York Times headline.
That's exactly right. Well, Michael, you've given us a lot of food for thought, and I look forward to watching the rollout of your book, and we'll be praying for you.
I really appreciate it. You write a book because you want to get feedback and start a conversation. So anyone who reads The Tree of Life and Prosperity, feel free to reach out to me on social media or by email. I respond to everything that people write me on the book because I want to spark a conversation. So thank you.
I'm sure you'll be hearing from our viewers. Thanks, Michael.